No, they didn't beat Detroit. They
Oh, really?
uh, but yeah, we're uh, give us a few seconds to let people get into the live stream before we get formally started here. But yes, you can see Caleb's second appearance here for a different sport, and Isaiah's first. And we'll talk about why in a little bit, why they're here, and ask a little bit. So we're going to get right into it. So, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Terrier Talk, Season 2, Episode 16. And a lot to talk about in a lot of different sports. Why aren't you guys preparing for apologetics? I think they did that beforehand.
Yeah.
I know Caleb potentially is going early on this week, so a lot for that. But a lot to talk about this week. But first, for boys basketball, I have two people on here. First, Isaiah and Caleb Calhoun. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. So, a big week for boys basketball. Developing in from football to basketball this week. Kind of, we're fully into it now, and had three big games. And we also voted for captains.
Mm-hmm.
And two people that were voted for captains of the boys basketball team are the two people sitting before you, Caleb and Isaiah. So first off, congratulations for that. Great job for doing that. That's how they view you.
Mm-hmm.
But second of all, is there anything about that that's like different from before, or is there anything especially you want to talk about being the captains of the team?
I just think it's an honor. I mean, having everybody look up to you and seeing you as the leader of the team and the most responsible, and knowing that you're going to push them no matter what, I think it's a good honor to have.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to add?
I feel the same way.
Okay. No, I definitely. It's there's a lot about when you're on the court. It's kind of different when you know the other people around you will respect you,
Mm-hmm.
and when you feel that way. First of all, thank you both, Seth and John, for coming on, and greetings. Thank you for interacting. I don't know about that, Seth, but thank you. So, the other thing about being captain is there a bit of extra responsibility towards it? Just having, knowing that.
Yeah, you got to hold yourself to a higher standard because you know everybody's looking up to you,
Mm-hmm.
and you just got to control your emotions and just be a good role model for everybody, and you got to set the expectation and the bar for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there is extra responsibility.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And there's a lot to. Well, congratulations about it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Thank you.
another thing I want to talk about before we get into what happened this week on the court,
Mm-hmm.
I also want to ask, both of you had to kind of transition from not really focusing on basketball in two different ways. So I'll start with Caleb. You're coming off of football in a very emotional season, I would say, for you,
Yeah.
having to get into the season it was a knee injury.
Yeah, injury.
And getting your first rushing touchdown of the season, all of that, and now you have to get into basketball.
Yep.
Coming off of that, how has that transition been for you over these last couple of weeks?
It's just different types of movements and stuff like that. It's just getting used to the flow of the game again and getting back in the gym and putting up shots and just putting in work like always. Basketball is more of a vertical sport,
Right.
and it's different than football. I mean, you're not really jumping a lot in football.
Right, especially the position you are.
Yeah.
You're not usually hurdling people in
No.
a high school position running back. So it's a very up and down. So I
Yeah.
can definitely see that difference.
Conditioning's way different. I mean, football conditioning and basketball conditioning are completely two different things.
Right.
So just gotta get back in shape and get back in the gym.
Yeah, and I can definitely see the first time you got on the court against St. Charles, you were in football mode.
Okay.
You were physicality. I'm going to not let you tackle me,
Yeah.
which is great when you have shoulder pads on
Yeah.
and you're getting the ball handed off to you. But you needed to adjust to that, and I think you're doing so very well.
Mhm.
And I think even though you're getting into, excuse me, I was looking at Brent asked, you can't jump, but you're getting into it. So
Mhm.
it's that transition. I think the fact that you had to transition into football, from football to basketball, just makes the captain voting is so much more impressive. So you're obviously seen as a leader on the court. So congratulations for that. It's great. Great job doing that. So Isaiah had a little bit of a different transition, and it's something I find interesting. You didn't play the whole year last year, correct? And this year you are playing, and you're back on the team, and is there a reason for that decision for coming back and being on the team, and obviously being well respected by the players as a part of the team and as a leader?
I don't know. It's kind of weird, but I've had time to get used to it because we were practicing for a while now.
Right.
So I got back into it.
When did basketball practices start? I know as part of the football team, I didn't really get into it
like October. Something like October.
Yeah, late October, I think.
I started shooting. Yeah.
So you've had a lot of time to gel, even without the previous play of last year, and I guess a lot has happened since then, and you've gotten into some games, and you've definitely shown on the court to be a force and a respected force on that court. Talking about the games this week, and it was a very interesting and very eventful week. First of all, it was Tuesday, if I recall correctly, we got our first win. You got your first chance to get on the court, and was there anything special about getting that first win this week for both of you guys of your senior season on the road? Not the first time on the road, but a nice road trip against a team that's in the state finals right now, or just had their state championship game in St. Charles, and obviously a big program in football. We had success against them in basketball, got that victory. Was there anything nice about that? Anything special about a first victory of your senior season?
Yeah, because in the past we've gotten off to really slow starts, and just getting the first one under your belt is probably one of the hardest things to do. And then once you get that win, you can just get the ball rolling and get your confidence going. So it's a good thing.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, it was a good feeling to get that first win, and I feel like it started us off on a good note.
Yeah, it definitely did. After the week before during Thanksgiving break, had a couple of tough road trips. A couple had a nice close game there against Hammond. Couldn't quite come away with the victory. Finally, getting that first one is really nice. Almost a monkey off the back of Roman Miniature one. Obviously, expecting lots of victories, but getting that first one is always nice. A question from someone, I don't know who this is, but a question from them: who is the better 3-pointer of the two? Caleb. Okay, I didn't know if there would be any contention there, but. It's interesting because I know Caleb, I guess, in years past would be seen as more the shooter of the pair here, but there's an interesting difference. Obviously, you've had a lot more weeks over the last few weeks, between football season and not football season to hone your craft. So I was wondering if there would be a difference, but interesting. I guess Caleb is. But big win there against St. Charles. Come the next day, home opener against Terrebonne. And didn't come away with the victory in a pretty big rivalry game. The last time they came here, they lost in an amazing game. But this time, they came to Vanderbilt. They got the victory in what was a kind of tough game and a kind of emotional game towards the end. So on the courts, what was going through your guys' mind while that game was happening?
We were just trying to take every possession at a time and just try to come out on top. And things just didn't go our way. Shots weren't falling. Shots weren't falling.
Calls.
Yeah,
the refs were against us now.
Refs are always against us, but it wasn't there.
Yeah, you can never. I think one thing about the refs is yes, calls are going to go against you, but I just personally never want to have to worry about that.
Yeah,
because it's something that's out of our control,
Mm-hmm.
And calls are going to go against us, and we just need to move on and know that it's going to happen and expect it to happen and just keep going, not be fazed by it.
Yeah.
Which, we didn't get the win, but it's something that we can learn from and something we can improve upon. But the big game of the week, the big thing that everyone, I think, is going to remember after this week was the last one. First of all, for the road trip, the bumpy, long road trip.
Yeah.
But also for the ending. And I wanted to ask specifically Isaiah about that ending on Terrier Talk. So, Final minutes. We go down by 1 point. We get the ball under their basket with just 2 seconds. Get the inbound. You get the inbound. You bobble it a little bit, and then you score off of the backboard, and we win the game at the buzzer. First off, within the timeout, because if I recall correctly, it was a timeout that was called.
Yeah,
beforehand.
Well, there was a timeout. Okay, so he made his free throw. He made 1 free throw.
Right.
He got fouled. Made 1 free throw. Coach Izzo calls a timeout, draws up a play for us, and we try to run the play, inbound the ball. Play doesn't work. It gets knocked off one of their foot, go out of bounds under the goal.
Called another timeout.
So called another timeout. We decide we're gonna run one of our inbound plays.
Right.
We run it, and
right. So, at what point in time during that timeout did you realize that you were going to be the person that was probably getting the ball?
As soon as he drew it up because we ran that play a few times throughout that game because like we saw
It was working the whole game.
Yeah, because we saw that they weren't playing it right. So he drew it up and he put me on that side. I knew I was going to get the ball. So
And so, is there anything like? I guess obviously Coach Izzo had trust in you going into that to do it. So the play happens, you get the ball, and what is going through your mind as you bobble it and then pick it up and get it into the basket?
When I bobbled it, I thought it was over, but I shot it and then I had to look at the scoreboard to make sure that we had won. But it was crazy.
Yeah, I guess you had to make sure it went off before the buzzer went off, and it was because it was very close. You only have 2 seconds. You get the ball. There really isn't enough time to get it, drop it, get it, and then shoot. So it was very, very close, very clean cut. But very close call. So an amazing moment, an amazing, great job for both of you guys during that game. Both big contributors. Isaiah ended up with 9 rebounds during the game, 7 of which in the first half. So big reason we were playing so well at that point. And we played well throughout the entire game. Had bad runs, had good runs, but very good, very close game that put in the trust into one of the new captains of the team, and you pulled through. You came close to messing it up, but you pulled through, and that's what matters. And it's something that I think we won't forget for a long time. So thank you for both of you for contributing to that great moment, and thank you for coming on.
No problem.
Thank you. So, going to go ahead and move around the chairs a little bit. Someone asked, I don't know the person who asked this. I don't. A lot of. Someone says, "What you said? Someone drew up on the court." No, he drew up. That sayings we're talking about. He drew up a play on a board while they were on the court. He didn't actually draw anything literally on the court. A couple of questions. Someone asked, I thought, about a lot of messages are getting removed, but one question I thought I saw asked was about the girls' basketball game, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But don't worry, we're going to talk about it. But during the interview, obviously, I want to talk about the boys' basketball moments and some great ones during that game. I think we touched on everything for boys' basketball this week during the interview with Isaiah and Caleb. So thank you to them for both coming on the show and talking a lot about that. So thank you for that. So I don't know why these messages are getting retracted. I don't know if it's because of the username of the person sending them, but someone also asked thoughts on the LSU win. I don't usually talk about non-Vanderbilt stuff, but I will touch on it. Great win. Obviously, I think, first of all, Joe Burrow is going to walk into New York with the Heisman Trophy, which is awesome, or walk out of it with the Heisman Trophy, which is great. Never happened in LSU. Well, it happened in 58 or something like that, but it hasn't happened in nearly 60 years in LSU's history, and we've only had one finalist since then, so having a near shoe-in going into that week is great. They also asked about Alex Casey on varsity. I honestly, I assume you're talking about. Oh, you're talking about Alex Castell. If you're talking about Alex Castell, I assume that's what you're asking about. Yes. Okay. So that question, yes, is a very important one. I think it's interesting. Alex Castell as a player on the team, I think is very interesting in general. Uh, First of all, being a freshman, I think the summer basketball reps he got and the practice he got was very useful because obviously Alex has, and he might be watching this at some point either now or later, but he has a lot of talent in basketball. He's a great player, and he just needs practice, and he's getting it. And that's the best thing for him in his career, both now and in the future. I think he's earned the varsity spot for sure. He even started the game, I think it was against St. Charles in our first win. And he's contributing. He's in the right place at the right time on offense. He's a contributor. He knows the plays. He's doing what he needs to do, and he's only going to get better in these next few years. So I think it's the beginning of a long, great career for him, and I think he's ready for it. So, am I still announcing the basketball games? Yes, I am, unless something weird happens in, like if there's a weird, rare conflict, I should be at every home basketball game announcing. So that should not be a problem in that way. I should be there for all the games this year. But yeah, Alex Estelle, I think it's the beginning of a long career for him, and I can't wait to see. Obviously, I won't be here for the conclusion of it, but I can't wait to see what he does and how he improves throughout this season. He just needs reps. He just needs more time on the court, and I think that's what he's going to get. So, but I think he's ready for it. So the soccer games, I will also talk about that. We're going to go ahead and move on to that review of the rest of the week, and it was a very, very big week. We talked about boys basketball. We're going to go ahead and move on to girls basketball, who also had a crazy week. Do I play basketball? I don't play it at a varsity high school level. I do throw around every once in a while. I'll play just pickup games, but I'm not on the high school team. So, girls basketball had a crazy week. It was the main event of last week. I talked about it, the Jack Becker Classic, the third annual Jack Becker Classic. And there is so much to talk about with one of my favorite games, just as a speculator, just as a spectator, excuse me. The story of the game against Terrebonne is one of my favorites of the entire year. Now, we came up short. We lost, and that's unfortunate. But the game itself and the story of the game was amazing, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But the tournament itself, we began by playing against Edie White. The first time we opened this tournament playing someone other than Terrebonne, and it was a statistical anomaly of a game, that Edie White game. The game in total had 45 fouls, 27 of which in the second half. And our girls did not hit a single 3-point field goal in the entire game against Edie White. Wow. It's a weird game. But with those two things in mind, it was a rivalry game, and we know how physical our girls are, so the 45 fouls aren't a huge surprise. And the refs even kept the whistle in their kept their hand off the whistle a little bit throughout the game. They let a few go. Very physical game, but it was a game that we led the entire time. We were up 10-1 at some point in the first quarter. It felt like we should have run away with it, but we didn't. They stepped with it, and they kind of started closing in the fourth. With about 3 minutes left to go in the game, they closed within 2 at some point. And it's weird because we looked like the better team throughout the entire game. We never trailed, but they closed in. Now we separated. We ended up winning 48-41 by 7 points. But it was a very weird game. Kind of a sloppy game. Shouldn't have been as close as it was. Not an amazing win for us. but the starters played maybe a little longer than we wanted them to throughout the game, which leads into the game later on that night, the final game of the night, the game against Terrebonne. One of the best games, maybe the best girls basketball game I've ever seen, and especially at a high school level. But to understand just why I love this game so much as a story, it's important to understand the history of this game at the Jack Becker Classic on the opening day. 2 years ago, the first annual Jack Becker Classic, the first game ever in its history, was amazing in its own right. It was us against Terrebonne. We were down 20-6 at halftime. It looked like Terrebonne was going to run away with it. We were down by 14. And then in the second half, we come back. We tie up the game in the fourth quarter. We're battling with them. I think they hit a three with about 30 seconds left. And we have one inbound with about 5 seconds left to go to tie the game up down 40-37. Leah gets the ball. Leah shoots. It goes in and out. And we lose the game 40-37. Heartbreak, but a terrific game to watch in total. John asked, I'm not really sure what he's referring to when he asked how many were taken. He might be asking about the three-pointers. We didn't hit one. I'm not sure. A decent number, but not that many. Probably in the 8 to 10 range. Maybe that's highballing it, but we didn't hit one. I don't know if that's what you're asking about. If you're asking about something different, feel free to clarify, and I'll try my best to answer that question. So that was the first time they played. The second time they played, we were down 28-25 with about 10 seconds left. It was, okay, you're welcome. And that game was very physical, obviously with a score of 28-25 with 10 seconds left. It was very low scoring. We had trouble getting the ball, getting buckets. And Leah, again, with about 10 seconds left, has a chance to hit a three, misses. We end up losing 30-25 because they hit free throws at the very end. The players in those games, the same core of players that were in those games 2 years ago and the year before, same core of players in the game now. For us, we all know this group of senior girls: Brittany, Amy, Allie, Leah, Kate, Rebecca, and a lot of players even behind them. And they've all contributed in previous years, and they're all really contributing now. And we have a set of twins, both really big contributors. One maybe playing a little bit more than the other, Amy versus Allie, but we have that pair of twins. On the other side, Beyonce Henry, Trinity Pierce, and Ariel and Aricia Celestine for Terrebonne have been playing for 3 straight years. They were 4 of the 5 starters in the original game 2 years ago, just as 4 of the 5 starters from the original game 2 years ago are still here now for us. Brittany, Rebecca, Amy, and Leah. So these two teams know each other, and on the court, you could tell they hated each other. It was physical. It was brutal. It was a grinder of a girls' basketball game, and you don't usually see that in girls' basketball. There aren't that many girls' basketball teams that do that. But Vanderbilt, we already know that about our team. We're physical. We're tenacious. It is a unique basketball team in that way. And Terrebonne's is much the same. And the rivalry was on the field, on the court. The physicality was on the court for 4 quarters. It was never a blowout at any point in time. Teams made runs, but never by that many points. We never led throughout the entire 32 minutes. We never led the game by more than 5 points, and we never trailed by more than 4 points. We led for most of the game at the end of the first quarter. This kind of shows just how physical the beginning of the game was. At the end of the first quarter, we were tied 5-5. Baskets felt like touchdowns in football at this point in the game. Any bucket felt huge in the first and second quarters. And we started scoring more and more as the game went, as fouls started to take hold. Another thing about the series, in these previous games, we always ran into foul trouble. In the first game, Trinity Pierce had 4 fouls, and Beyonce Henry had 4 fouls. And I think Amy fouled out. Maybe either Amy or Brittany fouled out in that first game. Second game, same thing, lots of foul trouble. In this game, Same situation. Leah ends up with her third foul in the first half and has to play very carefully the rest of the game, ends up with her fourth eventually. Brittany gets attacked in the third quarter, has to play a little bit softer. I mean, she never plays soft, but has to the tinge of physicality that we saw a lot of in that first quarter and why it was so low scoring laid off a little bit when foul trouble became a big problem. And it was a big problem for both teams. Amy got into it, Leah got into it, Brittany got into it. And on their side, Ariel Celestine and Trinity Pierce, their two best players, both got into it. One quick note, I talked about Amy versus Allie, our pair of twins who are both big contributors. They have the same thing. Ariel Celestine and Aricia Celestine, both starters, but Ariel is kind of the bigger, more playing player, probably their best player on their team. So, the game is physical for 3 straight quarters, and it stays that the entire game. And we were always close. This game, as opposed to the first game, where we didn't hit a 3 the entire game, Kate Bonvillain has 2 big second-half 3-pointers, one at the very beginning of the third quarter, the other one when we're down by 4 points and needed the most. When we were down, I think it was 39-35 at the time, and needed it the most with about 4 minutes left. She hits one, and it's huge. Both threes were super big, the only 2 we hit in the entire game. And the game is so close the entire time. And the foul trouble starts becoming a big issue in the fourth quarter. The other thing that becomes a big issue in the fourth quarter is the refs. The boys touched on it, how sometimes calls don't go our way, but that is maybe the big focal point of this entire game. Calls don't go either team's way. The refs made mistakes. They're human, and they only had 2 of them during this game. They made mistakes, and man, those mistakes were crucial towards the game. And it wasn't just against us. It was for both sides. And the mistakes on both sides are very important to tell the story of this game. Starting with early on in the fourth quarter, a foul is called on Ariel Celestine, Terrebonne's best player, number 32, instead of who it should have been called on, number 22, Beyonce Henry. This ends up being really important. It gets misnamed, miscalled, when number 32 gets her 5th foul, their best player, their best point scorer, the only player on their team that's really provides a spark of points. In the first half, she plays the whole first quarter. She's the only person that scores their 5 points. She comes out. They score nothing. We go up 5. She comes back in, and immediately they're back in the game. That's how big of a spark she was on offense. When she came off, we knew they really weren't going to do anything unless Trinity Pierce got on fire, and then she did. And then they called a foul that probably shouldn't have been called, a hands to the face foul. I don't know exactly what it's called, but basically it looked kind of like Trinity might have gotten her hand into Leah's face while Leah was dribbling. They called it. Really, the hand was about a foot away from Leah's face, but they called it. It was Trinity Pierce's 5th personal foul, and she was also out of the game. At that point, outside of free throws, they weren't scoring points, but we were down by 4 with about 3 minutes to go. And producing buckets, producing points would have been huge for us. And it would have been very difficult for us both beforehand and afterwards. And it was very difficult in those final minutes. Obviously a big 3 from Kate, but outside of that, it was hard to do. It was a lot easier in the second half because there were a lot of fouls in the second half to get onto the line, and hitting free throws was the big thing. Hitting free throws was easier to do than getting the ball into the hole. So when someone was called for a foul, that is what felt like getting points because both teams had very good free throw shooters. Amy Parrott, I think, went 4 for 4 on the line in the fourth quarter. Their players were very good on the line. I think Trinity Pierce hit a few near the end of the game before she fouled out. So the game's really close. We're down 42-41. No, Carter, I'm going to talk about soccer next. I'll talk about the tournament in a little bit. I'm talking about the girls' basketball game right now. How about the Saints loss? It looks like a really good game. I didn't have a chance to watch a lot of it. Big play from George Kittle to win the game, so good job for the 49ers. But sorry for the Saints, I guess. So we're within the final seconds. We're tied. They draw a foul. They hit one free throw. We're down 42-41 in the final seconds. 25 seconds left to go. We run a play. Brittany, who has 4 fouls at this point, including a tech. Brittany gets the ball, drives down, gets what looks like a foul. And if she gets fouled here, she probably gets on the line. She only has to hit 1 to tie, 2 to win the game. And she's a pretty good free throw shooter. She probably hits both and wins the game. Probably. Ref calls it, and we see the ref calls a charge. It's Brittany's 5th, our probably best point scorer on the team. It's Brittany's 5th. And that probably decided the game. If she gets on the line there, both teams were in the double bonus at this point in the second half. She gets on the line, she probably wins the game, but instead, she doesn't. They get the ball. We force a foul. They hit 1 of 2 free throws with 10 seconds left. Again, this time down 2, this time with a chance to win the game. We get a screenplay to Leah Verrett. She gets a chance to win the game with a 3, and she misses again. And first of all, if Leah's watching this, don't feel bad about it. You did the best you could, and it just didn't fall at that point. So just don't feel too bad about it. You played great the entire game. You had a great game, and you did a great job. Just don't worry about it. But the loss is unfortunate. We do end up losing the game. We finished 3rd in the Jack Becker Classic. I think we had another win on Saturday. So great job for the team for that. But the loss to Terrebonne, as always, it's never fun to do. The game was exhausting to watch. Even to watch, I mean, I can't imagine what it was to play. It was physicality for 32 straight minutes. It was crazy to watch. Very close game, very tight game for the entire time. And it afterwards, to see us come up just short again, it's unfortunate. It's bad. I don't like doing it. I don't like watching that. But the game itself and the story of the game was amazing, and it was worth the watch. So anyone who did come, the crowd wasn't very big, but it was a very loud crowd. And it was kind of a 50-50 crowd because Terrebonne obviously is very close to us. So it was a very riled up building for every call that went our way, for every call that went their way, for every bucket, every 3, everything that happened. It was huge. It felt monumental. It felt big. Everything was important. And we came up short. And it happens. Unfortunate loss. Something, obviously, I think it's something we'll learn from a lot. But I hate to see it, but it was a very good game. So, moving on to another very eventful sport for this week, boys basketball. Excuse me. I just said the wrong thing. I apologize. Give me 1 second. Another very eventful sport for this week. Boys soccer. Excuse me. Boys soccer. An interesting week. Now, obviously, I don't think the boys soccer players that are watching this want me to talk about this game a lot, but I do have to touch upon it. The soccer game on Tuesday against Parkview Baptist. An interesting comment I saw about the game. So we end up losing 2-1. We didn't play very well, as told from one of the players. We had a bunch of shots on goal. They didn't have many, but they still end up winning the game. It's just one of those games where the better team doesn't win. That happens in all levels of competition, across all types of competition. It happened here, kind of a big upset. What happens. Not a good loss, but one thing interesting, I saw a comment on LA Prep saying it kind of makes the entirety of the Division 3 playoffs situation more interesting because Barbecue Baptist was not expected to beat us in this game, and they did. I'm not someone talked about. I think the boys' defense can improve. I'm not a soccer aficionado. I can't talk about the schematics of soccer too much, so I don't know exactly how this soccer team can improve to stop a loss like the Parkview Baptist loss from happening. But apparently, whatever they needed to fix, they did later on in the week. So whatever happened, apparently you guys learned from it very quickly and had a very good tournament in Lafayette. So great job for that. Let's talk about that tournament a little bit. The Copa Acadiana tournament. We placed first. We went 3-0-1 and a great performance at the tournament. A couple of the box scores, we beat North Vermilion 3-1, Country Day 2-0. We beat Terrebonne in the finals. Nice revenge, sort of, for the girls' basketball loss. I don't know how that relation goes, but still, nice win over Terrebonne, 3-1 in the finals. And we tied against ULab, a very good program, 1-1. So an overall great tournament. We proved ourselves against some somewhat renowned programs. I don't know how big of boys soccer teams they are. ULab is one of those schools that's good in everything, so I assume they're good. And tying them in that game is, I assume, would look very good going into the future. And we'll have success. Hopefully we can take that momentum going 3-0-1 in that tournament and go into the next few weeks. I'll talk about boys soccer a little bit later on when previewing the next week, but it's not a very eventful week. A bunch of teams that we're not too worried about losing to. Just don't let it be a trap game. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Finally, girls soccer only had a game against Letcher. We mercy rolled them 8-0. Not a very eventful week for girls soccer. Moving on now to the previews. Starting with boys basketball, very busy week for us. We have 2 games on the road to start the week. First at Catholic New Iberia on Monday. Nice, interesting history with this team. We played them in the second place game of our own home tournament last season, and we beat them in a very close game. Caleb hit a shot to tie it. Cruz Terrier hit a couple of free throws to eventually win the game. So very interesting, very good game, and it'll probably be a nice competition. Another long road trip, not quite too long, but another long one for us. Not quite the West Feliciana trip, but still long early on in the season. The next day, we travel to Rummel. Now, the Rummel game is interesting. We haven't had the most success against Rummel before, which makes sense. Rummel is a pretty elite basketball program. However, they just won the state championship in football, which is great for them, but it also means that their football players are just coming into basketball now. They'll have like one practice to prepare at most, unless they practice on Saturday the day after, which I would be surprised by. So they really won't have their football players at max at best. Carter makes a very good point. Congratulations to Josh Rotolo for being nominated for Barker Honda Player of the Week. Be sure to vote for him if you can. Well, obviously everyone can, but make sure to go and vote for him. So congratulations to him for that. So, boys basketball, 2 big road trips against one team that will provide us really good competition, really close competition, and a team that is very good that we might have a chance to maybe get an upset with. They're a very good program, but maybe just coming off of their football season, maybe we've been able to make some noise. And then later on in the week, we host our own kind of winter shoot-around tournament the Thursday, Friday, Saturday of this week. So hopefully we can have some great success there against some pretty good competition themselves that we'll be playing, and we'll see when we get there. Girls basketball. I only saw one game that we're playing versus Destrehan on Tuesday. Big program, but not a great girls basketball team from what I saw. Maybe a chance for a big win against a pretty well-renowned school. That's really all I saw. Maybe kind of a light week for them. Makes a bit of sense since they just had the big Jack Becker tournament. Don't want to wear them out too much. But yeah, kind of a lighter week for our girls basketball team. Boys soccer kind of plays a bunch of peons, I guess is one way to say it. A bunch of teams that really we should roll over. But, of course, don't rest on your laurels after the big success this last weekend. Make sure to take care of business in each game. Get the goals when you can. Get off to the lead that you need to, and make sure you win those games. So don't rest on your laurels, boys. You also have a game against. They also have a game against East Jefferson, who is historically a pretty good team. I don't know how good they are this year, but that's always a game to look out for. That game is at home on Wednesday, so go out and support your Terriers, the boys soccer team, in that game. What could be a really nice, potentially competitive game for them. Finally, girls soccer. A couple of games against some not great teams. The Academy of Sacred Heart is not very good. They're 0-1-1 right now this season. It would be a game we're going to be favored in. Should be a game that we win. Maybe in a similar fashion to Letcher, we'll see. Same thing with the Destrehan game. That game is at home later on in the week. Not a special school in soccer. Kind of similar to the girls basketball thing. Very good program in general. Obviously a very good football team. But, they moved it to a road game? Excuse me. So they moved the East Jefferson game to a road game for the boys soccer team. So if you can, obviously still want anyone who can to go out there and support you guys in that game. So girls soccer, not a lot this week, except for one big game, the main event of this week, the game against E.D. White. Another edition of the Holy War. I think it's the fourth edition that I've covered on this in this series. We played E.D. White in girls basketball last week, which moves our official athletic record, I think, to 1-2. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think that is what it is right now. In the E.D. White Holy War discussion, I do want to bring up something cool that happened in a non-athletic event, but still nice competition. There was a Quiz Bowl tournament this Saturday. A little bit of self-indulgence here. I'm part of the Quiz Bowl team. We didn't do that well in the tournament in general, but in our match against E.D. White, we came away with a big victory, which is kind of the only thing that matters in those tournaments because we're playing a bunch of teams from other regions, a really loaded tournament. But we got the win against E.D. White, so, I guess good for us and good for that whole rivalry, us getting that victory. But little tangent aside, we're 1-2 in athletic competition against E.D. White in head-to-head direct athletic competition. We got the big victory in girls basketball last week. Let's see if we can follow that up with another victory in the winter sports for girls soccer. And the thing is, as big as this rivalry is, it seems that their girls soccer team isn't what it has been in previous years. They're sitting at 1-4, their record right now. So maybe they aren't what they have been. We seem to be what this program is assumed to be, which is a statewide great program, a statewide elite program. And E.D. White really isn't that right now. So this is a chance for us to get a big victory against our rival, in the Holy War, in the girls soccer edition of the Holy War against E.D. White. Big chance for a big victory. And And it's, no matter how good these two teams are or who is favored in this game, it's always a big game. No matter what the situation is. We've seen that before in other sports. The boys soccer team knows that as well as anyone else in the state championship game a couple of years ago. They were, I think, the 1 seed who were not favored to go in and beat them, but we did. So we all know that no matter what the overview is, the preview is going into the game, anything can happen. So, be ready for the game. Obviously, big rivalry game. AUI's a very good girls soccer program, excuse me. But a chance for a big win against our arch rival. So I wish the best of luck for our Terriers in that game and for, of course, all of the athletic events that are happening this week. And I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll hope to see you guys next time. Same channel. See you.